Quick announcement, I'm going to be participating in D&December 2017. As you might already notice, it's day 6, and I missed days 1 through 5. I did a couple of Twitter posts, but I'm not really going to be doing it every day because I don't really have much to say about every prompt, but I do have something to say for this one, so hope you enjoy it. Anyway, since I missed day 5, I'm going to go over both day 5 and 6. If there's a specific story you want to listen to, I'll leave the timestamps in the description box. There will be a greater focus on the despair part of day 6 rather than the triumph part of day 5, but both are there since one feeds directly into the next. So basically, the backstory of this campaign involves the first 3 player characters, a human monk named Kai, played by myself, a wood elf bard named Jill, played by my wife, and a dwarven fighter played by one of our mutual friends, all needing money to remove a curse placed upon them by their previous employer, the Guild of Adventurers, I think is what they were called. Our reason for leaving said guild is not important. Basically, they were doing a lot of unethical stuff while also giving us terrible jobs and no money, so we decided to leave, though not before my friend's fighter smashed a few of their doors and stole their doorknobs. It makes just as much sense in context. A few days later, we noticed a glowing ice sigil appearing on each of our foreheads, well, kind of on the brow, which we later determined to be something the guild was using to spy on us and ascertain our location. We found this out after being attacked by a group of assassins a few days after we left the guild. To deal with the scrying curse, our characters came up with a way of naturally covering their foreheads or their eyebrows. The dwarf would be constantly wearing a helmet in public, the elf would comb her hair over the sigil, and my character elected to wear a turban fashioned from a cloth from one of his robes. As a side note, I've drawn this character several times, and I think I prefer him in a gi versus robes, so I didn't really have a problem with that. Anyway, we ended up forming our own guild so we could obtain protection from the local government while we tried to fix this problem. And one of the assignments we took was to help the village deal with the monster infestation. Said monster infestation ended up being a werewolf, as well as a cult looking to resurrect a dark god to grant more power unto said werewolf. After finding a magical silver sword in a shrine on top of a mountain, disrupting the ceremony, and killing a lot of cultists and doggos, I mean wolves, we started to fight the werewolf for a second time. The first time we weren't able to do anything. Chalk that up to none of us possessing any weapons that werewolves aren't resistant to, which is a lot. This time, however, we were in possession of a silver sword, which did the majority of the damage, though Kai was also able to do some scratch damage using some previously obtained acid darts, and Jill was there to heal us when things got scary. However, the werewolf still proved to be a bit too much for the 3 of us to handle. And one by one, we began to run out of HP, leaving Kai as the only one still on his feet, but one more good hit away from a total TPK. Excuse me. Sensing this moment as a now or never moment, Kai faced 2 options: try to resuscitate his friends and hope they were able to stay up long enough to stop the werewolf, or try to finish the werewolf off of himself. Kai stood slowly, picking up the short sword from his dwarf friend a few steps away, and swung. And then the DM asked the magical question after the hit and damage were calculated. How do you finish off this werewolf? Cleaved in 2 by one big swing was the answer. The party was stabilized and agreed that now was a good time for a long rest. No one was sure how long they slept in the cave, but once they made it back to the village they were tasked with the saving, they learned that a large chunk of the village population was involved in a cult and had perished. But the elder paid that no mind, offering the party a reward of gold as well as allowing them to keep the sword. It was on that cart ride back to the village, back to the main city, that the DM revealed that Kai and Jill were now affected with the lycanthropy curse from their injuries from the previous battle. Needless to say, we were a little bit scared. Thankfully, once we made it back to town and at the start of the next session, we were joined by a group of other player characters, though one of them was understandably reluctant to work with a group of people who were days away from becoming uncontrollable beasts. After asking around a bit, we determined there were 2 possible solutions. 1, hunt down some wolfsbane, and 2, use a magic or divine artifact to remove the curse. The party argued about this for a bit before we arrived on the decision to get the artifact, since we knew where one was. It was a crown that had been touched by a deity, hidden in a basement of a local church that had somehow been overrun by undead. We made a deal that if we brought the crown back and purged the undead, we would also be able to receive a reward from the city. Some slashy, hacky, puzzle-solving fun time later, we found ourselves in the main room with the crown and a door between us and the horde of zombies. And from what we could determine, the crown was basically out of energy. At that point, there was little dissent in the group, people saying that we should have just gone for the Wolfsbane. Even outside of the game, I thought the DM might have been trolling us with a wild goose chase. However, the thing about desperation, it breeds creativity. Specifically, we had a monk, a paladin, and a bard who knew some healing spells in the party. We decided to each offer up a little of our energy to the crown, not unlike trying to form a spirit bomb for you Dragon Ball Z fans. And the DM said he'd even give us one full charge for thinking on our feet. Naturally, instead of making us feel better, this made us more upset since now we basically had to choose between the monk and the bard as to who got the curse removed. And this is where you can see a lot of my character Kai's personality come out. Up until this point, although his actions have typically been more good-natured, he's a little off socially. Particularly, he's kind of abrasive, since he has a 9 in charisma. Think Yusuke from Yu Yu Hakusho and you get a decent idea of how he approaches things. Sure, not totally original, but hey, that's what you get. Anyway, in a moment where he didn't have time to think about another solution, he told Jill to take the crown and use it, which she did and was immediately cleansed of all impurities, as in both the lycanthropy and the scrying curse. At the same time, a huge burst of energy filled the basement, disintegrating all the zombies and fully healing the party's HP, as well as cleaning and sanitizing our outfits. I'm leaving out some details there, no need to explain. You notice that I said healing our HP, as in we still had 2 scrying curses and 1 case of lycanthropy to deal with. At this point there were no other options, and needing a moment to think quietly, Kai dropped to his knees, and the group fell silent for a few minutes, unsure of what to do next. I had mentioned that there was a chance to use Wolfbane to cure the curse, but everyone was thinking the same thing. If we couldn't fix the curse within a short time period, Kai would need to be put down. After a few minutes of silent pondering, the dwarf finally said, "Kai, you should try the crown one more time." "What? You heard the paladin. There was only 1 charge." "Yes, but you 3 put a lot of energy into that crown. Maybe there's something left." Indeed, there was a little residual energy left in the crown. We could sense it, but weren't sure if it would be enough to do anything. Still, desperate times, Kai placed the crown upon his head, and the DM asked me if I chose evens or odds. I don't remember which I chose, but after which he rolled a d4 and said that Kai could feel himself being cleansed of the lycanthropy. Once the cleansing was over, the crown disintegrated and was lost. Once the session wrapped up, the DM revealed how much slack he was giving us for thinking on our feet and coming up with unique solutions. And although we walked away from the session happy that we managed to at least reverse the problems from the previous, just how close we came to ending in the worst way possible still hangs over me. Again, this probably counts as a triumph as well, but unlike the story I chose for triumph, we had a lot more to lose in this case. Rather than just a TPK and things staying the way they were, my character was going to become a weapon of mass destruction, and there was no telling how many would be kept at risk while the other existed. Or while that existed. And that's the most despair I've ever felt playing D&D. So, what do you think, guys? And let me know in the comments below, like, if you've ever had any experience like that, what you would say the biggest despair you've ever felt playing was. And I hope you enjoyed the story, and I will be back at some point. I seem to upload every couple months. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, and have a good day.